If you are a new rider, you do not want to break this motorcycle etiquette. This is something that a lot of bikers carry with them, and it is super important. Today I'm going to tell you why you should never break these 7 motorcycle rules. They're unwritten, they're unspoken, but it is motorcycle etiquette 101. Today I'm going to tell you what these 7 are, why they're so important, and why if you break them, in some of these cases, you are actually asking for more trouble. And in other cases, with some of these, you want to do it maybe most of the time. In other places, you don't want to do them. So it's kind of a mixed bag of motorcycle etiquette, things you should absolutely follow, but then others will say, well, you know what, I'm not going to follow those. Others may do these things around the wrong people, and it can get you into some hot water with some bikers out there. I'm just going to be straight up honest with you and give you my opinion from what I've seen and riding a motorcycle for a while now. But whatever your opinion is, whether you believe this motorcycle etiquette should be followed, or you say, I don't care what anybody thinks, leave your opinion down below. Let's go and jump right in. The first one is the biker wave. Okay, surely you've heard about the wave and you know how you should be doing it and how most people, I think, kind of buy into this concept. And there is an important aspect to this. There's a reason that a lot of us do it, right? And so I want to talk about that. But there's also places you should never be doing this. But first and foremost, it is a sign of respect, just straight up. When you see another motorcyclist, basically what you're acknowledging is that somebody else is willing to not only share the passion, but some of the dangers that come along with motorcycles. It's just a fact. Whether you're fully geared up or you have 0 gear on at all, both of you are inherently taking more risk because of something that we love. Now, I wanted to trace the origins back to the motorcycle wave, and it's widely accepted that this started during World War II, where you would have couriers and others on motorcycles behind the lines, of course, mostly, and they would actually wave to each other as they were passing by. It shows solidarity between you and camaraderie. It's very simple, right? It's never this. I actually did that to my grandfather when I saw him at American Biker a couple weeks ago, but you know, it's never like, hey, how's it going? You know, it's very simple. Boom, 2 fingers down, and you guys go on about your business. It's so common, in fact, that when somebody else doesn't do it, you kind of wonder, maybe they just didn't see you, right? That's a possibility. Maybe they were actually in traffic and they're working the clutch, and in that case, you know, you kind of give a nod or something like that. But you will find, in my experience anyways, where I live, that most of the time, no matter what they're on, they're actually going to wave back. I actually saw one guy, this was maybe 2 months ago, and I was going up to Harley, and he was on a sport bike. And he was like pointing me out, and I don't know if he like recognized the bike from the channel or whatever it was, but it was kind of funny because, you know, I mean, he was very exaggerated, like, hey, you know, and I kind of waved back. I did a little bit more exaggerated than what I would normally do, but it was just kind of funny, man. There is just such a deep respect there for most of us. Some people say, hey, I don't feel like I have to do that, and you really don't. But I do find that it is common. I looked this up, and it seems like there's places where it's more common than others. According to some, and I don't know how they figure this out, but the Midwest and the southern United States are more likely to wave back, whatever. Maybe you live somewhere that's not in the Midwest or the South, and you can tell me how many people wave back to you. And people do it in other communities too, right? The Ford Raptor community, some guys will do that. The Jeep community, guys will do that. On a bike, you're just accepting that, hey, that person is just as passionate as you are about riding. And we're few and far between too. But there is a place where you should not be doing this, or you're going to find yourself definitely not receiving as many waves back, and that's at some kind of rally. Any kind of event like this, basically you're going to have motorcycles passing you every 3 seconds, and if you're constantly boom, 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 you're not going to be able to work the clutch, right? I mean, there's just too many of you passing back and forth. So this is a time where you're going to find out pretty quickly that at rallies, you're already there. You're already kind of sharing in that experience with a lot of people. There's no real need to actually wave back and forth. Now, towards the end of rallies and stuff, maybe the scarcity of bikes starts to kind of increase as the crowds dissipate. Then you might see more waving back and forth. But generally, at rallies, this isn't something that you want to do. This next one is interesting and very disrespectful, I think. But if you go to a veterans ride or a charity ride, you're not going to be treating this like a bike night. And as a matter of fact, you're not going to be looking for attention, right? I mean, bike nights, it's kind of like, hey, you know, everybody checks out the bikes and who has the best looking one. And a lot of people enjoy that, right? That's totally fine. But when it comes to veterans and charity rides, especially, those two are kind of sacred in the motorcycle community. And like a lot of them, they started after World War II to recognize veterans. Rolling Thunder is a big one that's been going on for a really long time. I think that one's in DC, where they are honoring POWs and people that are still missing in action. Toys for Tots, charity rides for kids that unfortunately have some bad diseases and stuff like that, right? So there's a number of different rides. And motorcycles, it's kind of one of those things where a lot of people have a bad perception of motorcyclists, but then they see these types of events and they're like, oh wow, these guys really do care. It really is kind of a powerful thing. I think I really want to do one of these this year, because I find that it kind of brings the best of the best out in everybody, but in, you know, just kind of a cool experience. But you know, the thing is, you don't want to show up to one of these and, you know, everybody's getting ready for the ride, or maybe just finished the ride or whatever, and, you know, you're revving the throttle, and, you know, unless there's some kind of ceremonial thing that you guys all kind of do in solidarity, basically just don't act like a jackass. These rides aren't about you. They're not even really about the people that are in the rides themselves mostly. This is about whoever it is, whatever the cause, whoever you're riding for, that's who it's about. And it's almost like, in some of them, kind of like a funeral, right? In a funeral procession, you know, you're going to be very respectful. That's what you're doing in some of these charity type of rides. So showing that level of respect, I think, is very important whenever you do these. Bike nights and stuff are totally different and can be treated different than any kind of veteran or charity rides. Now, you might start picking up on something here, and that is the level of respect, right? So when you're parking, you want to leave enough room for people on both sides of you. If you are with a smaller group and you guys have limited parking spaces, right? You want to park over on the space and leave enough room where other bikes can get in that space with you. If you're at a big event, right, you don't want to park diagonally when everybody else is trying to get as many bikes in as possible, and then here you come pulling in and you're parallel to the curb and you're trying to show off your bike specifically. This does not sit well with a lot of people. And to be honest with you, I haven't seen people do this. I'm not saying that it hasn't happened, but definitely crowding other motorcycles I've seen. But as far as like parking diagonally or parallel or anything like that, I've never seen it, but I can't imagine that would go over too well at all. There's a certain amount of respect there that you must follow. That's actually the next point, right? It's just showing respect. It's one of those things around motorcyclists, there's like this stigma. I think some people embrace it more than others, but generally speaking, there's kind of like this tough guy image when it comes to bikers. And some of them uphold that really well, and they're willing to back that up. So you want to show respect to everybody, whether they have a cut on or even if they don't, you show respect. And it is one of those communities, I think, when it comes to tight-knit people that are willing to do a lot for you, it's probably the best community that I'm a part of, that I've ever seen. I'm a part of the gun community too, which is a very tight-knit group of people as well. So I get the benefit of actually seeing both communities, and they're both fantastic. And the bike community is one of those ones, like, you're super close-knit, you're gonna look out for another biker, even if you don't know them, but you gotta show respect in order to get it. Some of the best people I've ever met ride a motorcycle, and they can also fly off the hinges quicker than any others too. So when it comes to other people's bikes, the way you park, and generally the way you act, at least when it comes to the cruiser community, Harley Davidson, Indians, all those types of guys, you show respect and most likely you're going to get it. The next one's interesting. If you ask any motorcyclist what's their number one fear when it comes to their motorcycle, I would love to poll people, and I'd love to get your answer, actually. Leave it down below before I get into it. But I think it would probably be dropping your motorcycle at a crowded event. I can tell you it's probably one of mine for sure, because it seems super embarrassing, right? And this is an area where if you don't have good clutch throttle control, If you have a passenger on your bike, you're at a rally, a bike night, right? Generally speaking, you're going to be going slower speeds. There's going to be tighter turns maybe, and it can really show some of the deficiencies in your own riding or some of the areas you need to focus on a lot when it comes to slow speed stuff. You'll see riders with their feet down. Generally, this is a sign of somebody that may seem comfortable, but maybe they're not so comfortable, right? They kind of know, hey, you know, this is where the bike is its least stable. And even though on Harleys and Indians, you're talking about dropping the bike like a foot. I mean, it's really nothing at the end of the day. But here's something you won't see. If somebody drops their bike, unless they're doing like one of the fun, silly games, you know, that they have at some of these rallies, nobody's going to be laughing at you. You are going to have about 3, 4, 5, maybe more people coming over to instantly help you. This happened to a buddy of mine. We were up in Myrtle Beach a couple of years ago, right? And he just pulled the clutch in as he was turning the bars. No big deal. It happens. Stepped right off the bike. And as embarrassing as that feels, it's like that instant lump in your throat type of reaction. It's really not that big of a deal. Most people are going to come over because they get it, right? It happens to everybody. You're going to drop your bike, and sometimes it's going to happen in front of other people. It really sucks, right? And there are ways that you can absolutely avoid it, but it does happen, and just remember, it's really not that big of a deal at all. Here's another one that you need to be aware of. If you're doing a demo ride or you're with a group, you're in a charity ride, whatever the case is, right? You're in a group of other riders, there is etiquette there that you must follow. Now, typically, if you're going on a ride, the leader is going to kind of give all the rules and tell everybody, you know, hey, this person will be in the front, this person will be in the back. We're going to be riding staggered formation, and there's just certain things you don't do, right? Like passing other bikers, leaving enough room. They'll especially tell you this in like demo rides, right? If you've ever done those, where they don't want you riding like this, they want you riding like this. And while there's a speed differential there that you have to keep, you also don't want to be riding too slow, where you're holding now the back of the pack up. So there's a respectful distance and speed that you must kind of maintain when you're in these formations. But you also don't want to be crowding people up, because what is our number one defensive maneuver on a motorcycle? Well, it's our ability to swerve, right? That kind of is our defensive type of thing, along with emergency braking and some others, but swerving is huge. So if you have something in the middle of the road and you're right here on the back tire of the guy in front of you, or even worse, up at the saddlebag area, and he tries to swerve, he's going to come right over into you possibly. Not a great situation. And now you're talking about potentially no riders going down and just kind of a close call now to maybe several riders going down. You know how it is. It's kind of like a chain reaction at that point. So keeping your distance and making sure that you just kind of follow that pattern, keeping enough speed, but also giving people room in case something does happen. You know, and looking up the road too, making sure that you're dependent upon the other riders in front of you to an extent, because your vision is going to be limited, but just making sure that you're also paying attention. It's a really deceiving time because you have so many people in front of you, so you're like, I'm going to be able to react if somebody else has an issue, whatever, but that whole chain reaction thing can happen much quicker than what you expect. Now, this next one's a touchy subject, and I thought that most people kind of knew this. It's okay if you don't, but it's not okay if you cross a line here, and that is wearing any kind of colors, any kind of affiliation, any kind of motorcycle club, whether you think it's merch, you think it's a cut, or if, God forbid, you have rockers and you're not a part of that, you're going to get called out, and it's probably not going to be good. Now, you guys have all seen that video where this frickin' poser confronts the kid wearing the Sons of Anarchy cut. The guy calling him out, by the way, they're not going to say what they would do if they're in public. They could care less if they're in public or not. That's how you know that guy is just a complete moron. That video went super viral years ago. And the kid, you could tell he was younger, right? And he took it off. There is kind of a line there too, right? I mean, they went to great lengths in that show to make sure they were respectful to the culture. And of course, they do have merch. I mean, wearing that it's probably not something I would ever do, to be totally honest. I know I actually wouldn't do it. I like the show, but I don't like it that much, right? Because there's certain rules there in those clubs, right? There's amount of dedication, respect. It's kind of like furthering the brotherhood. There's rules that they follow. And whether that's your thing or not, it's not something that you can just go in and imitate because you're going to get called out. There was a situation at a memorial ride in 2018 in Texas. It's an incident that happened in Southern California where a guy was wearing support your local club. I don't remember which club he was supporting, but he had a t-shirt on, right? He thought it was merch. Well, I guess opposing club members were there and saw him wearing it, right? That obviously leads to a confrontation. I think that one led to a fight. Also the 1% patches, right? So this started in the 40s. The American Motorcycle Association came out and said, you know what? 99% of motorcyclists are law-abiding. Sounds like a pretty simple statement. Well, motorcycle clubs picked up on that and said, you know what? Okay, we're the 1%. You know, so that's just kind of the attitude and the amount of respect that they have. Rain, shine, snow, sleet, doesn't matter. These guys are riding their bikes. That is their code. When you talk about real bikers, if you will, some people don't believe in that statement, but these guys fall into that category. They ride their bikes everywhere, every time, doesn't matter what's going on. And so while you may see it as, oh, well, why can't I wear that? You know, I mean, it's just a club. I would not take that stuff lightly at all. I've been around these guys when it comes to like rallies, right? I'm not saying I've, hang around them and all that kind of stuff, but I've been around them. And you know how many confrontations I've seen? Zero. I did a video on this recently talking about the incident that happened down at Bike Week, right? There was a scuffle, there was a shooting that happened, but generally speaking, it goes right back to the respect thing. You don't act like a poser, you don't try to put on something, and you don't try to act like you're a part of that part of the motorcycle culture. You show respect, you're going to get it. You say to yourself, mind your business, you're probably not going to have any kind of issues. The next one has been talked about a lot, but I think it's still equally as important, and there is a reason behind it, and that is touching other people's motorcycles, or even worse, sitting on them. This again goes back to those post-World War II days. You may be starting to pick up on there's a certain culture, heritage thing here that plays into a lot of this. You don't sit on another man's horse, and the motorcycle is the modern steed. You just don't do that. In some cases, maybe you don't even take pictures of them. Now, at shows and rallies, that's kind of expected. And I'm not going to sit here and say, oh yeah, I've asked everybody, every single person, hey, can I take a picture of your bike? I don't take a picture of their tags and stuff like that because I just don't. But at rallies and stuff, it's kind of expected, but it's still not a reason to go up and touch it. All right? That's a whole nother thing. You got to think, man, some of these guys, not only did they buy the bike, but they spent tens of thousands of dollars in the paint, the stereo, the custom fabrication, the motor, bars, wheels. There's a lot of money wrapped up into it. And there's a whole balance thing, right? Even if it's on a kickstand, a simple mistake can cost somebody $500,000 or more dollars because you walked next to it. Maybe you had some keys dangling from your pocket and you got too close to it. You scratched up the bike. It's one thing to admire somebody else's work, quite another whenever you go sitting on it or you're trying to do a selfie with somebody. It just does not work out well for pretty much anybody if somebody sees you on there. Of course, if they're a part of a club, duh, right? You don't want to do that. But it doesn't matter if they're in a club or they're an individual. You just, again, show respect to other riders and what they've put into it. A lot of riders may see that motorcycle as something that they had their first wreck on, they repaired it, they put all this money into. It is an extension of themselves, and so you have to keep that in mind as well. It's not just another car, right? It's not just a source of transportation for a lot of people. It is, in some people's cases, it is their identity, and when you get in that personal bubble, you can expect that you're at least going to have words with somebody if they see you doing that. The last one, though, does give you some permission to encroach on people's personal space, and that is if you see another biker on the side of the road, it is the code to actually help them out. At very least, you want to give a thumbs up, look, make sure they're all good. I've done this before too. They give a thumbs up back, perfect. But if you see somebody in need, God forbid they have an accident, it's not even a question, oh, do I help them? Do I, sometimes in a car, you're like, man, I wish I had time to help that person on the road. It doesn't even really matter what's going on with you, helping them is going to become priority. Now, of course, if you have an emergency of yourself, I'm not saying that, oh yeah, don't take your pregnant wife to the hospital to have your baby and stop to help this biker. There's a line there, you know what I mean? Obviously you come first, but when it comes to situations like that, where you are able, capable, have no reason not to stop, you need to stop. Even if you're in your own car, you ride a motorcycle, you understand that they're vulnerable. On the side of the road, that's one of the worst places that you can be on a motorcycle. How many times have you seen videos where people in cars, cop cars with lights on, still get hit by people just not paying attention? If you're in a car, right, you can put those hazards on, bring some attention to what's going on there. Hopefully people are paying attention and you can help them get back on the road. There's been some, I think independent surveys, most people, 80% or so, say they have stopped to help another biker. Whether you're on your motorcycle or not, you just want to be able to help them out. Whatever that is. It may just be a phone call, but just something to help them out. There you go. There are 7 motorcycle etiquettes and rules that every new rider is probably going to break, but maybe this will make it easier to transition into this lifestyle. Maybe you've been riding for a really long time and you're like, yeah, I've done this. Whatever your experience is, I want to hear those down below. If you like what I do, consider subscribing. See you in the next one. And as always, hold them down.